I'm from Manitoba, Canada, and what I'm about to share with you is an encounter that happened to me a few years back that not only terrified me to my core, but also made me look at the world differently as a whole. Some people may not believe what I have to say, and that's fine, but I know what I believe, and I can assure you, I wish I didn't believe it myself, but it was very much real. I was driving back home from a work trip. I'd been working away for a few nights. The journey back was therapeutic. I was alone with my thoughts and travelling up near the boreal forest with my route taking me through some beautiful wilderness along the journey. As I drove along, the sky way greying and the last dying embers of sunlight were leaving the sky as the winter night was beginning to take shape. I'd been driving for a fair few hours, but didn't want to stop off as I had wanted to get back that night. It had been a long few days and I was looking forward to the weekend. The cars got fewer and further between as I travelled down the long winding road. As I was tucked between towering rows of trees either side, I reached for my coffee, taking a sip as I fueled myself with caffeine. As I looked to place my cup back into its holder next to me, I almost spilled it everywhere, missing the holder. Taking my eyes off the road for a second, I just about got it back into place without getting coffee everywhere. As I looked back up, it was then my eyes drifted to the side of the road ahead, where they were met with the sight of a man coming into view, as he stood on the side of the road holding his arm out. At first, I didn't see him straight away, being occupied with the coffee, and only having my eyes off the road for a second, it was like they came out of nowhere, like they had just walked out from the trees. I passed, staring at the person as I tried to slow down, but seeing the person late, I ended up pulling over to a stop, albeit slightly further down the road. Willing to give this guy a ride, I flashed my hazards to signal them to come over. I'm a friendly enough guy, and I'm always willing to help if someone's in need. I've picked up hitchhikers before. Now, I know it's not for everyone, and you're within your rights to ask, how can you trust picking up a complete stranger? You're right, I can't really, but for some reason that never stopped me before. As I was saying, I flashed my lights to signal. As I looked out my rearview mirror, the person just stood there, in the distance, staring at my car. I wound down my window and waved my arm again, gesturing for them to come over. After what seemed to be an age, the person finally began to make their way over to the car, with the sunlight having almost completely faded. I couldn't really see what they looked like. As I continued to watch them from my mirror, and they slowly neared, I finally began to make out the gaunt, pale face of the person, and to my surprise, the size of them. I hadn't noticed that before, as they must have been sloped, and from a distance, when passing, they didn't look as tall. But now I could clearly see. This person was fucking unusually tall. Looking again as I tried to make out their face, it was then I noticed their eyes. Their eyes were all black. Thinking, what the fuck, as they approached, I anchored my head out the window looking back, and in that moment, a sense of dread and fear washed over me. Having a clear look at this person now as they homed in on my car, I don't know how else to say it, but this person's legs, they weren't normal legs. They were dog-like legs, just resembling a dog standing on its hind legs, hairy and grey in colour. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. This thing was right next to my car now, grey in colour, and taking in what I was actually seeing, it was like it was half man, half dog-like. Without wasting another second, I pushed down on the accelerator and sped off, not understanding what it was I had just witnessed. Looking back out my rearview mirror, I could feel the panic course through me as my eyes widened. To my horror, this thing was chasing after my car at an unnatural speed, not possible from a human. I sped up as fast as I could, my heart racing as I saw a set of headlights coming towards me in the distance. I flashed my lights, hoping to get the oncoming vehicle's attention and for them to see, but as I looked back in my rearview mirror, the thing chasing me down was gone, like it had disappeared out of sight. I didn't stop to find out as I hightailed it out of there, thinking non-stop about what the hell I had just seen. The oncoming car must have caused it to go back into the forest. After that night, when telling my friends and family what I saw, a lot of what I said was met with skepticism. No one really took what I said seriously, apart from one person, my dad. When I told him, I could see it in his eyes. The fear. He told me that he believed me, and that he had a similar encounter when he was younger, when out hunting, and that there are things out there that we don't know about. After discussions and doing further research, I fully believe I'd crossed paths with a Skinwalker that night. I read through many descriptions, and that's the only thing I can relate what I saw to. Some people may not believe, but honestly, I know what I saw, and it still scares me today, knowing that they are out there. This encounter happened to me when I was on a camping trip in the Seneca Forest, and has stuck with me ever since as one of the scariest nights of my life. Camping and hunting are favourite pastimes of mine. I love exploring and adventuring new places, and when planning this trip, I decided on making a long weekend of it, and I was looking at somewhere I hadn't been before. So that's when I decided to try out camping out of state in West Virginia, where I'd heard good things about its national parks. I had never been there before, but knew it was a vast space of nature and wilderness that you could get lost in and forget about the world. On the day of our trip, I set out early. I was really looking forward to getting out there and exploring and being one with the nature. Having reached my destination, it was beautiful, just as I expected. But without taking you through my full day's trip and boring you with my exploring, I'll fast forward to the first night. I had set up camp and had settled in nicely. There's something peaceful about being alone in nature with your own thoughts. After having dinner and a few drinks, having been tired from the day's hiking, I got myself settled in my tent for the night, and as I lay there, I slowly began to drift off. But my peaceful slumber didn't last long. I woke up to a sound that startled me, and as I sat up listening out for what the noise was, it disappeared into the silence of the night. Awake now from the noise that woke me, I thought it must have been the sound of an animal of some sort in the distance. Ready to roll over and try to get back to sleep, it was then I heard it again. This time, closer, and this time unlike before, I was fully awake and realized it was a weird sound, something I'd never heard before in my life. It's what I would describe as a wailing sound, like if someone was crying out, but unlike in any tone I had heard before. As I sat in my tent, thinking to myself what the fuck was that, it didn't sound like a deer, no wolf or even no bear that I'd ever heard before. As my thoughts raced, I could hear the sound of shuffling outside my campsite, and the sound then got closer and closer, until it was right outside the tent. I could hear the sound of distorted breathing, and something moved around outside. The fear building inside me as I sat in the tent, my mind racing thinking what it could be. The feeling of the unknown in that situation is horrible. Knowing something is on the other side of your tent, but you can't see it, is such a terrifying feeling. And at the time I was too scared to move and attempt to open the tent to see what it was. Trying to remain silent and not move, hoping whatever it was would just pass. I sat there, holding my breath, as the shadow of whatever it was retreated, and the sound of shuffling got further and further away. After sitting there for what seemed like an age, I finally mustered up the strength to move, and unzipped the tent to look out, believing whatever it was now gone, and it was safe to do so. I peered my head out, looking around at the dark, empty, moonlit campsite, relieved to see nothing was there. Grabbing my flashlight, I stepped out, wanting to make sure the coast was clear. Shining the light around the campsite, I could see nothing out of the ordinary, until the light fell upon something that sent an uncomfortable feeling through my body. Shining the light down, I saw to my shock and confusion an unrecognizable footprint, but I couldn't work out what animal would leave that behind. It was long and stretched, with 4 wide, pointed, finger-like claws. Fumbling for my phone to get a picture, just as I was about to get my camera, it was that moment I heard the shuffling again in the near distance. Shining the light in the direction of the sound towards the trees lining, it was then the overwhelming sensation of fear coursed through my body as I briefly lit up a set of glowing eyes watching me. As soon as the light hit the area, they vanished behind a tree. But what lay grasping the bark of the tree was the sight of a greying, long, bony-fingered hand as it rested sprawled on the tree. Froze to the spot, I could feel my heart beating in my throat. Not knowing what the hell it was, but knowing that something was watching me, I didn't know what to do. I slowly backed up to my tent, searching aimlessly for my rifle and keys, not taking my eyes off of whatever it was. As my hand finally reached my rifle, it was then I saw the hand slide up the tree, as an eye peered out from behind. This time, a good 8 foot higher than it was originally. As it slowly moved from the shadows of the tree, revealing itself, Every part of my body began to shake with fear, as I couldn't really comprehend what I was seeing. A tall, skinny to the bone creature, with antlers and unusually long limbs, standing on its hind back legs as it pierced the silence with its haunting wail again. Terrified and awestruck with what I was seeing, it was as if a bolt of adrenaline was injected into me as I finally broke my trance, firing my rifle towards whatever this terrifying thing was. It moved back behind the trees. And at this moment, wasting no more time and fearing for my life, I ran the opposite direction. Running as fast as I could, I gripped my rifle as tight as possible, as I looked back to see to my horror the sight of the haunting eyes of that thing following behind me. In the distance, my legs went to jelly, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out of there, and away from whatever pursued me, my keys rattling as I ran for my life, turning back every few seconds to see the shadow still lurking in the distance behind me, as if it's stalking me. I finally reached my truck as I threw myself inside, looking back one more time to see again the haunting silhouette of what stalked me, just standing in the distance, watching my every move. I put my foot on the gas and hightailed it out of there, never looking back. I didn't stop that night until I was back in town, getting myself a cheap motel room. I couldn't sleep after what I saw. The adrenaline was still racing through my body, along with my mind racing with all kinds of crazy thoughts in my head. What was that thing? If I hadn't have heard it and got the hell out of there, what would it have done to me? All kinds of things. I have never seen anything like that in my life before, and can 100% say it was not any species that I've seen before. I fully believe that night I crossed paths with a Skinwalker. Being alone in the forest, I don't know why it revealed itself to me. Maybe I'd been too close for comfort to where it dwelled, and maybe it was warning me. I've never been so scared as I was that night, to know there are things out there that really exist. If you believe it or not, it's a terrifying thought either way. I've not been back to that place since, and now when I go camping, I never camp alone. We hope you enjoyed delving into these creepy encounters with us. What situation would have terrified you the most if you were in that position? Let us know in the comments. As always, please like, comment and share, as it really helps the video and the channel out. And if you haven't already, subscribe and join the world of horror motives for more chilling horror content, and drop some suggestions of topics you would like to hear in the future. Thanks for listening. Until next time, fear lies within.